in this episode, we're going to dive really into marketing flights for shows. And you're someone who has an incredible amount of knowledge and experience in the space. You've been on the marketing team for thousands of shows, plural, probably counting pretty high in that thousands also at this point. So I couldn't think of anyone better that I'd want to talk to about this. And we're really going to dive into the announce, because you said specifically that's something that you think is one of the most important parts of marketing a show successfully. But before we dive into the actual topic, I want to give you an opportunity to just introduce yourself and Resound and where that experience comes from.
For sure. Well, thanks so much for having me. I love to get to chat about these topics and hopefully share some experience and give some insight into some of these things that, we do on a daily basis here at Resound. So I'm Aaron. I'm technically in our events and festivals sector of Resound. So I focus on major events, festivals. We do a few festivals, Levitation that just happened. We do Austin Psych Fest, and then we do a number of larger events that are over 1,000 capacity. We do primarily booking tours and shows, mostly in Austin, across Texas, and we probably do around 800 shows a year. So, it's a very fast-paced environment. We go through a ton of shows. We have a few specific team members mainly handling those shows. That's, where we're at now. I was doing that for the past 8-9 years. Now for the past year, I've been focused more on the festival side, which has given me a lot more insight. I have a lot longer of a timeline to work with. Well, usually.
Yeah.
And so that's a little bit of a different spot, but, doing the tours for years, doing the local shows for years, that's definitely where a lot of my experience comes from. And, that's one of our primary businesses at Resound.
That's cool that you have kind of both experiences, because that is a little bit different depending on the size of the show and how much runtime, like lead time you have and stuff.
Totally. There are some pretty big differences from those big events to like a smaller event. You've got more budget to work with, more people to talk to. There's more bands to promote,
Yeah.
Ideally, there's a longer timeline to work with, so you do have more time to develop strategies and things like that. But I do still have a hand in a lot of our show promotion, and our marketing teams work together on all those things.
So let's dive into this topic of the announce, because this is like something for honestly, quite frankly, in the shows that I've promoted in the past, I've totally fumbled. and can tell when it's like, all right, the venue and the promoter and the artists, or artists plural, are like not all on the same page, and like the artist doesn't end up even announcing the show on their social media until like 2 days before the show, because I didn't get them the stuff they needed, or they were like not responsive. So I can see how it can go wrong. And I can also see when it's done correctly, it has this kind of sense of, in people's feeds and in their, in their experience of their email newsletter and all these different things, it's like, oh, everyone's talking about this. And that's really what we want as event promoters, is like someone to get that sense of like, oh, everyone's going to be going to this thing.
You said it too, like making sure people are on the same page. I think a phrase I'll use sometimes is, let's not start the race with our pants down. Like we gotta be able to line up at the start of that race and all go at the same time. And if not everyone is aligned or on the same page or has the same understanding of really what the goal is here and what we need to do, typically that will show up throughout the rest of the campaign. And that's why I place so much importance on the announce. There's so much that goes into it. There's so many different factors that we can look at and talk about. And I've had experience with announces that sell out on announce. I've had experience where we do very, very little on announce, and then we have to, really try to kick it into extra gear. So I'll say, I think the primary thing is that the information is clean and clear. So everyone knows what they're promoting. Everyone knows the details of the event or show, no matter what capacity that show is. Everyone who's involved, whether it's a record label, whether it's the artists themselves, whether it's local partners, the venue, any type of co-presenters on the show, everyone ideally should be posting at that same announce time. They should have similar messaging, but in their own voice. You don't want everything to look like a copy and paste of the same thing. And like you said, you want it, a successful announce involves, of course, good sales, but it does involve lots of folks talking about the same thing in a different way or maybe a similar way. You want to make sure that, your creative is very solid. You want to have a good idea of what you're representing and what you're showing to people. You don't want to start promoting something with, just a press photo or just a kind of thrown together asset, and then you're going to have to create something later to help. It's like, why wouldn't you just create the best asset you have for that announce and push it out that way? I think a big thing is that we get to really see how a show is going to do at announce. And I think kind of a good rule of thumb is if you can do 10% or more of the sales, depending on how long you have to promote the event, you're in a pretty good spot. That should really dictate the rest of the campaign. Some of the things that we line up, I kind of just ran through them and mentioned them, but making sure that the venue has their website listing up, making sure that the venue is talking about it, making sure that the other partners that you're working with are promoting the same thing. You really want to find some local partners to talk about the event, even if it's just on a low scale, like a record shop, even like a coffee shop, partners that make sense with that artist to talk about. And that could be, a really big campaign, or it could be just like, hey, our friends over at Resound are promoting this concert. Go check out the concert. You want to make sure that the artist is posting, any support is posting, especially if you've got a touring artist. Touring artists, they don't always post directly about the show specifically.
Yeah.
And that does kind of make sense. They're usually doing a huge tour with a bunch of dates. And so it is kind of hard for them to dedicate some specific time to the show. Usually you'll get a tour post up. It does help to have them post directly. They usually do that in stories. But if you have local support on your show that's confirmed at announce, you really want them to be promoting as well. You want to have your listings up at the same time. The faster you get your Facebook event up, your local calendar listings up, stuff with Event Vista, getting that stuff up at announce, that will work for you for the entire campaign. Once that's there, you don't have to think about, well, is that listing up? Is it right? Is it accurate? Or people are finding it? Those types of things work in the background from day one. If the information isn't clear, you're not sure who the support is, we don't have good creative, no one told the venue it was going live at this time, the partner hasn't been contacted, that will result in, only a few people really talking about the show. There's different scales of shows. It doesn't always mean that every show has to sell out at announce, or we have to do that 10% at announce. But really, in my mind, the announce is the time to really get people talking about it and make that statement of what this is. If those things are not quite filled out or finalized, you're not talking about a complete package. You're talking about something that exists, that's coming up. Maybe some people are talking about it, maybe others aren't. And then you kind of have to work backwards off of that. You have to go, okay, well, the announce wasn't great, so now let's go find a partner to talk to. Now let's create some new artwork. Let's get the video made. Let's get the listings up. All those things are happening after the point of the main announcement. And those things are not going to work as well if they were all connected at them.
Yeah, it's like you're doing the same amount of work. There's like a thing in marketing that's like the concentration of force. I don't know if you use that term at all, but when I was in radio, we would use that a lot, where it's like, if you only have so much budget to spend, like if you have $500 in a week to spend instead of 5,000, like maybe don't spread that across every single day of the week. Can you make that one day of the week where every radio spot break is talking about your event or your business or whatever, and that's gonna be more powerful for your brand than if you kind of drip it out and it's so easy for people to miss it. And there is that repetition thing too. If it's oh, the coffee shop mentioned it, and then I saw it on my Instagram feed, I also got a newsletter email about it, and then I saw it on the Austin Chronicle or something, and then I went and bought a ticket. That's how marketing works. People see stuff one time and they usually don't act on it, but once they see it a couple of times, it starts to feel oh yeah, I should act on this.
Yeah, exactly. And, we've been seeing a lot of late buying trends. So people just buying tickets late. If there's a perception that it's not going to sell out, and you're tight on money or you're busy, you don't have your schedule together, then there's not a huge incentive to buy early, And so,
Yeah.
and it is difficult to run an ad or do any paid marketing and assume that, that is going to directly relate to a bunch of sales. It doesn't always do that. A lot of it does relate to direct sales, but you see an ad on Instagram for an event, then you might go look up the venue later on. You may not always see an ad and immediately take action, And so again, why it's important to have these things listed everywhere, having that information readily available so that someone's not having to think, well, wait, where was that again? What was the name of it? Who was talking about it? You should be able to find it from multiple angles, whether it's from the artist page, promoter pages, venue, just website listings, maybe an influencer is talking about it. You shouldn't have to hear it once and then try to dig through and figure out where this event is, what it is.
As a fan, I've 100% had that experience. There's a venue here called Page Turners, which is Connor Olberst from Bright Eyes. It's his venue. They put on these great shows, but they never post it on their website. And so I'll hear oh, Sarah Marin's coming to play in town, and I'm like, she's one of my favorite acts. Then I'm like, but where? Oh, Page Turners. I go to Page Turners' website. I'm like, there's nothing about it there. There's nothing on their Facebook page. And then my friend Allie posted about it on her Facebook page, and I just happened to find it. And it's I wouldn't have even known what time it was, what day it was, whatever. And I really wanted to go to that show. And just imagine how much that's happening if you're not on top of all those different things. And it's hard. I'm not, no judgment. I mean, I'm 100%, I'm guilty of that as well. But
yeah, it is really tricky. And you want to, all we can do in marketing is show it to the right person. It's our job, right? Is saying, hey, this is what we're offering. Here is the specifics of that. Here's what you need to do to show up and enjoy, and if any of those things are not working for you, they're kind of working against you in a sense.
Yeah.
And that's why I try to pride myself on those announces. And, a really good thing to do, depending on how many you have, is really getting together with your team, making sure that at least your internal team are aware that, this is what we need to get done. And then probably having some of that external as well. So if there is a key partner, making sure that they're aware.
Can you dig into that a little bit more? You mentioned that a couple times, and some of the promoters that I really respect of all types of events, not just music and concerts, have talked about this of getting local businesses and partners to kind of shout out the event or promote it. How do you come up with who's a good fit for that and where that makes sense?
Yeah, it's a great question. And, I think you kind of have to experience who works well with you, you got to kind of just try some folks sometimes. I'm always willing to work with someone. You kind of have to test some things out. Not everything is going to result every time the same way. For instance, we work with a lot of record stores in town, and we do giveaways with them. Sometimes we try to find more unique ways. It's not just hey, a pair of tickets. It's can we do an in-store signing with the artist? Are they available for that? Can we do a new record and we buy the record from the record store and they give it away on their networks? We try to do those so that it's not just we, the promoter, constantly giving that stuff away or saying, hey, we have a giveaway. And you also don't want the same partner every week to be doing the same giveaway. You don't want things to become stale. So you do kind of have to rotate those things around. What my suggestion would be, find a few core partners that are willing to work with you and want to work with you, and that they're excited about what you're doing. You're ideally excited about what they're doing. Someone who has their own audiences, someone who has their own email list, who has customers coming into their shop, those. And, record stores, that's a pretty, that aligns pretty well with concerts. You've got it's literally going into the shops to buy the records, the bands to play the venue, So that works well. I would also say looking for people outside of that network, so maybe an artist loves a certain type of food, can you find a food partner that would want to do, we've done, a few times, have lunch with this band, and we pay for lunch and we do that. Like that doesn't always work out. The band has to be on the same page. There's more
Yeah.
stuff involved, but I would say try to find, those key partners that are always willing to work with you and always talk about your stuff, and you can return the favor. Offering marketing trades, offering staff tickets, things like that work great. But then really digging into the genre of the music, the style of the band, and like maybe they like, go-kart racing or something. So you could do like a partnership with a local go-kart, place, and that doesn't always work, but typically I found reaching out and just asking and start to develop that relationship. And if it's a good fit for both parties, then hopefully they stick around and you're able to work with them in the future.
You gave some really good ideas there of just like what's in it for them too. Cause I think that's the part where people get caught up a little bit like, well, I don't want to ask them because it's just like promoting my stuff. And it's like, well, yeah, but there is some kind of cross-pollination of audiences, which I think is everybody that I talk to knows how valuable that is, because your email list is like your gold. And if you can get some cross-pollination of those email lists, it's better. It's good for everybody that's in that network of people sharing contact, basically.
Completely. And that's, I would consider those community partners, people that are literally in the community and they have their own business, and, you want to be able to offer something to them in return. We don't always have the luxury of paying people for their services. We typically on some of those things work pretty much on a trade basis. And, if it's a cool company and they're down with it and they see the kind of vision that you're able to explain and discuss, then most likely they're going to be down, because there is that kind of cross promo, as you were saying. Like, we can if the go-kart place has something that they want to promote, if they're promoting one of our things, like we can definitely promote that to our newsletter, even to our socials, if it's something that fits.
All right, we're running out of time here. See, I knew that we could talk about just announce this whole time. Are there any kind of other important channels or parts of that unified announce plan that you feel really should be talked about before we wrap up?
So depending on the scale of what you're doing, I really like to have an understanding of the budget and where the budget's being spent, making sure that you have ad access to the artist page, making sure that you have ad copy ready to go if you're running it on their page. Getting those types of things approved sometimes can be tricky, and that applies to big artists and it applies to local artists that are taking care of themselves. It's like, that's kind of more of that background stuff. You don't really want to announce and not have your budget finalized. You don't want to announce and not know where you're spending that budget. I like to leave a little bit open in the budget in case something new pops up. You don't want to kind of just close it all off and say, sorry, we already, it's already allocated, it's already spent, and we've been on sale for a day. But, you want to have that figured out so that you're not stressing about, well, when are the ads going up? Where are we spending this amount of dollars? Are the radio mentions going to go live? All of that ideally should be figured out. So your job is no longer stressing about, are we running the ads? Are we, no, that's all done. That's part of the basic announce. Now we can think about, is there a more involved partner we can work with? Is there a better ad strategy that we can develop? Is there a new asset we can work with? Is there a content piece we can develop? How do we tell this story in addition to how we've currently been telling it?
Yeah. Love that. All right, Aaron, we probably geek out about marketing for so much longer, but let's leave it there for today. If there's anywhere someone wants to connect with you, and I mean, Resound is pretty easy to find, but you personally, if someone in the space wants to connect with you, is there a good place to do that?
Yeah, that would be my email, which I'm in every single day, every single moment of my life. That's Aaron@resoundpresents.com. Feel free to reach out. We can talk marketing, we can talk partnerships, we can talk selling tickets. Any of that stuff is always good.
Sweet. Awesome. Thanks so much, Aaron.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Craig. I appreciate it.